Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Advocacy, part two of the pageants. Of course, if you tuned into our first episode with Frank and Sherine Pageant, it was excellent. I mean, it was a lot of information, and we left off, but we had to have part two. So, this is our part two today. I'm going to start off by introducing myself. My name is Paula Armstrong. I live in the DMV. I'm married with two kids. My son Jeremy is 24, and my Morgan Pop is 20, and she has multiple disabilities. Crystal.
I am Crystal. Hello, everyone. I live in Michigan. I am married with five kids with varying abilities.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I am Bunny. I live in Maryland. I'm married with three adult children, and I advocate for my 7-year-old autistic grandson, Grayson.
Okay. Thanks, team. Now I want to turn it over to Frank and Serene. Can you guys give us just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then after that, we're gonna go straight into the recap from part one, and then we're gonna go right back into part two.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Padgett. This is my beautiful wife, Sherine Padgett. We have two children, Ashley Padgett, of who we've been talking about her for quite some time. In the last broadcast, who's born with Dandy-Walker Malformation.
Mhm.
Ashley will be 30 years old, November 8th. So, and then we have our son, Trey. He's 26 years old. He's doing very well. He's married, has two children. So we have two grandkids, and we're very happy about that. And also too, we live in the DMV area as well.
Okay.
Yes. And I
Okay.
will say that we are three generations, like you said, we have children and grandchildren. So in this episode, we were planning on getting into the fact that not only was Ashley born with the cyst on her brain, but also Trey's daughter. So our granddaughter is born with the same condition. It's just a milder version. So we would be able to get into that.
What a help you're going to be with them. Can you imagine if you had
Yes.
that help that you are giving your granddaughter? Oh, wow. Not that you would want that, but the thing about it is just looking at their aunt, knowing how their aunt is a miracle. And then just the fact that you and Frank are somewhat experts, that is something to have on your side. I'm serious.
Let's
Prayer
go.
warriors, experts. I mean, whatever you want to say, it's just good to know that you have those people on your side. So we're going to go right into that, guys. Go ahead.
Well, I'll just provide a brief recap from the first episode that we did. And of course, we were talking about our daughter, Ashley, who was born with Dandy-Walker Malformation. Ashley has had 21 brain surgeries throughout her life. She had the first 6 surgeries between the ages of 2 months and 5 months.
Mhm.
And then she had the remaining surgeries from the ages of 7 up until around 17, 18, right?
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. She was
So
in college. Yep.
she had started college, and that's when she had her last surgery. But I will say that it has been a long journey. It has been a good journey.
Yeah.
And what I mean by good journey, it has been a journey that has allowed us as a family we've always been close, but to be a lot closer. Um,
Mhm.
and also too, one of the things too that I meant that I was going to mention before, and I was thinking about it. Um, Paula, you had just mentioned about the support system.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I'm very grateful for is the support system that we actually had, especially years ago, going into what we didn't know. We didn't know how things were going to look. I mean, doctors, there was no way that we would know that she would end up having 21 brain surgeries,
Right.
simply because of the brain malformation that she was born with.
Mhm.
So we didn't even know what that looked like. And I remember one time we were at Morning Star at our former church. There was Deacon Brewington and Sister Brewington, his wife, and Deacon Brewington loves to cook. He especially likes to bake.
So good.
And I remember one time he came, they had a situation years ago, and I remember the whole church was praying for Timmy, for their son, because they got a report and it was not good. He wasn't, the doctors didn't expect Timmy to make it till the next day. So I remember the church came together and we prayed. And I remember Bishop Johnson, he had prayed, stayed at the church, prayed all night. And then we got a favorable report. But from that, Deacon Brewington had to move to, I believe it was Minnesota, to the Mayo Clinic or something. He was there the entire, for most of the time with Timmy. So he had stopped by our house one time and he just bought us some food, and he doesn't know, him and Sister Brewington, they don't know to this day how much they blessed, how much they blessed us.
Yes.
Because they gave us insight and knowledge and like things to look out for. And one of the things he said to me, he goes, "Have they come to see you yet?" And I was like, "Deacon Brewington, what are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, they're coming." I said, "Well, who was the they?" So he said, "Well, the hospital psychiatrist, they're coming."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay." I hadn't seen him. So lo and behold, we were in the hospital. Shortly after that, psychologist comes in, psychiatrist. They wanted to sit down because they want to see where you are as a parent,
Yes.
and had I not known that, I may not have known how to handle it.
Yes.
But I mean, we were in a good place, but it was still just a treasure trove of information that they gave us, so that, just insights that I would not have known to look for. And we've always been grateful. And they would bring us food in the hospital and stuff, and cakes and stuff. And I remember we were at Children's Hospital in the beginning of in DC, and there was one of the sisters who goes to one of the other churches, Deborah Jenkins, and we ran into her. We had first met her there, and she was like a counselor or something, and she made sure that any questions that we had, that we can go and talk to her.
Yeah.
And she has been a friend down through the years, and it has definitely been a blessing, because she was at Children's then, and then when Ashley got transferred to Johns Hopkins, she was actually at Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it worked out well, and it has been such a blessing just down through the years. And now I think when we last left off, I think someone asked a question and said, "Well, all of this stuff was happening with Ashley. Well, what about Trey?"
Exactly.
And one of the things that Sherine and I had focused on, because I mentioned before, whenever Ashley was in the hospital, Sherine was always in the hospital. She didn't come home. I mean, if Ashley was there for a month straight or 3 months straight, Sherine was at her bedside every day. And I've always been grateful for that. But one thing I said to her, I said, one of the things we have to do, because Trey is 3.5 years younger than Ashley. And I said, we need to make his life as normal as possible. Whatever normal is, I don't even know what that is, but whatever that is, because he has his own desires and things that he's interested in. And I never wanted him to grow up and resent his sister, because all of this attention was being focused on him, on her, it's getting compared to him. So I would really have to, I mean, Sherine, she was holding things down in the hospital, which I greatly appreciated. So that gave me a lot of time with just Trey. So if it was a football game, a pee-wee football game, or middle school or high school football game, I made sure I was there. Whatever his interest was, whether it was in various clubs that he was involved in, because he loves science. He's always loved science. We both tried to make sure that we were there, just to support him, in his endeavors. And Ashley would be there as much as she could as well. So it was something, so today he's married, he has 2 kids, he's doing great. And as a family, it's kind of funny, because people say, when your kids get older, they want to get away from you, but for some reason they both still want to hang out with us. So I'm grateful for that.
I love that.
So I definitely don't take that for granted.
Yes, definitely.
Wow.
And I must say that it's very important, and for the families that's listening, always consider not only the child with the medical issue,
Hmm.
and don't just make them the center of your world, because there are other siblings. And not only do you not want them to have resentment against one another, but not even against the parents. I mean, they could grow up and,
Mhm.
plenty of us hear like the preacher kid type of story when they say, you know, my parents were more interested in the church and the church people than me. Well, you never want your child to say, my parents were so much more interested in just that one child and forgot about me. So you want to just make sure that both parents, if there are two parents, even if it's just a single parent, just, get some support and some help to try to make sure that you include that other sibling, because that self-confidence is built during those times, and self-value and high self-esteem. And if they can't find that strength at home and that loving support in the nucleus of their life, which is within your household, you don't want them to run out to the world looking for love, looking for
Hmm.
attention. And
Mhm.
so you have to make sure that you not only give a lot of time to the child with the medical condition, but consider the others, and also your spouse.
Hmm.
It's easy to neglect your spouse because it's like, when my baby come first, but you have to consider, one another as well. So
Hmm.
just keep all those things balanced. And it's difficult when you're
Yes.
like, hey, my baby is fighting for their life.
Hmm.
I'm
Mhm.
fighting, and we're tired, and we're hanging on by a thread, and it's just by the prayers of the saints and the grace of God that we're making it from day to day, moment to moment. So it's hard sometimes, but you have to step back, take a deep breath, exhale, and look at the bigger picture. You have other siblings and you have a spouse. The whole family unit have to stay intact. And Frank could tell you stories of families who came into the
Oh yes.
hospital
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
together as a family unit,
Yeah.
and they left totally divided. Actually,
Mhm.
Yeah.
we've seen more families not only leave separating and divorce and things like that, but we saw more children being left and abandoned as
Mhm.
wards of the state in the
Hmm.
Oh
hospital
my goodness.
because
Yeah.
the parents could not
Yes.
bear it. They did not have that fortitude. They did not,
Or
from
the support. The
the
support.
if
Right.
they didn't have the support, they didn't have
Yeah.
that foundation
The
of
finances.
the
Hmm.
finances. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of things that factor
Yeah.
into
It's the
that.
factor then.
So trying to keep that balance as best you can, fight for your life, but also grab one another and lift up each other and support each other and reach out for help, because you don't want, at the end of the day, your family to be fractured, and you don't want a child to be left and totally abandoned when it's not their fault that they were
Right.
born with a medical condition.
Hmm.
And to and just to let you all know, when as Frank said, I was there the entire time. I'm not leaving my baby. I don't care if she was there for 2 years. I'm going to be sleeping in that chair. So, but the most that she's ever been one stay was like 3.5 months. But
Hmm.
but I was there, and I'm telling you now, the parents who are there, those children get the most attention from
Yes.
the nurses and the
We
doctors.
do.
The
Yes.
children, when their parents are not there because they're at work or they're abandoned or whatever the case may be, when those kids are in those rooms alone, those are the ones who get the least attention. They cry all day, and my heart
Oh
breaks
my
for them
God.
because there's no advocate. And when the parents come around, then the nurses are attentive. So I'm just giving you a heads up. I was there. We seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I
So
had no idea that happens.
Oh
yes.
yeah. When
Okay.
Morgan was in the hospital with her feet, when she had her foot surgery, it was the same way. Even when we went to rehab, and I just feel bad because everybody is not there because they don't want to be there. People have jobs,
Right.
that. And I was a single parent.
Right.
Thank God Jeremy was away at college, but I will say that some of the things that you talk about as far as making sure that Jeremy was taken care of as well as Morgan. I mean, I had to split myself in half, but one of the things that I did, and God provided this, is a lot of the times she was in non-public school and he was in public school. So a lot of the times when his school was out, hers wasn't. So I would tell him it's mommy and Jeremy day. I
Amen.
said, you could do anything you want. Y'all, I begged. I almost pleaded for him to go to a movie so I
Right.
could sit here with my blanket and sleep. And sometimes he would go to the movies, he would go bowling, but it was his day to do anything he wanted. And I liked that because it was like, there were times that it's just Morgan Day, and there were times that he understood that today we got to focus on Morgan's health. So we're going to be at the hospital.
Yeah.
Sometimes he would go to his aunt's, which most of the time he did, but he had to just understand that, I wasn't going to be able to be there this day. But I think because he had his cousins, he was so happy. But I
Yes.
always made it where it was just a me and Jeremy time. And we had those times.
That
Yeah,
matters.
that
That
matters
matters.
a lot.
Yeah.
It does.
And I, just the part about just kids being abandoned. I remember we were in the hospital, and I remember I was talking to one of the nurses, and the nurse was telling me about, she was basically saying, hey, it's good that you guys are here, and you guys are always here. And and then she said, well, it's some kids around there in this particular ward of the hospital, and they become wards of the state. And I was just like, well, what do you mean? She said, well, their families, it's just people don't know what to do.
Too
And
much. Too much to
it's a lot of
Mhm.
pressure. And at first it makes you feel like, what? I mean, this is ridiculous. But then I had to gather myself, because I
Mhm.
remember Ashley had a roommate one time, and it was a young family. The guy was ex-military. He came in. Their child had had brain surgery, and when it came time for the surgery, he disappeared. The mother was there, but he disappeared. I'm not gonna say where he went,
Go ahead
but
and say it. Tell them.
yeah, well, no, I'm not gonna say where he went. It's a family show,
I thought you said he was in the service.
yeah, well, he was out of the military. He was out,
Okay.
So
and
he had him some quality time for itself.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Making it rain.
it,
Mhm.
it's a family show. It's a family show. So I'm not gonna say where it went, but when I first heard it, because we had Sherine had talked to the mother, and I had talked to her a little bit, and I was like, that makes no sense. And then it was like the Lord let me know, don't judge him.
That's right.
People, he doesn't know what else to do. That's
Yeah.
why he has made the decision that he has, simply because he's looking for some sort of coping mechanism.
A
Yep. That's
coping
what I was just getting
mechanism.
ready to say. That's his way of coping.
So
Mhm.
so once I realized that, I'm just like, oh wow, God, I'm grateful to have God in my life, so that I don't have to resort to these other things. But so many people don't have that,
Absolutely.
and it's important. But and I've seen people, because again, I said before, if it's you and you're sick, you deal with it. You suck it up, you deal with it. But your child, you just feel
That's true.
helpless
Yeah.
and, and hopeless. And I remember Deacon Brewington said to me one time, he said, listen, he said, I'm gonna tell you something. He said, there are no gray areas. I said, what do you mean? He said, in your family. He said, it's either going to bring your family together or it's going to tear you all apart.
Exactly.
And I was like, whoa. And I was glad that he told me that, because now in the back of my mind, that's always there to make sure that I'm on guard to keep things together as best I possibly can.
Yeah, because you'd be like, I'm not gonna be that statistic. I'm
Exactly.
not.
Exactly.
Yes.
I never wanted to be that. And God's been good to us, and it's been an awesome journey. And now I will say this too. Ashley, she has a birthday coming up. So Ashley said to us, she said, I need to take a trip. I'm turning 30. So right now,
Go ahead, Ashley.
Ashley, she was in Bali a couple weeks ago.
Goodbye first.
Well, she was in Dubai. Then she went to Bali. Now she's in Taiwan, and she's going to be in Taiwan until I think the 10th of November.
She's by herself.
No. In
Oh,
Bali, she was with the group.
okay.
In Taiwan, my brother and his family, his wife and his children, they live in Taiwan. So she's there
Mm.
visiting them. And so she's going to be there for, I think, November, about the second week of November. Her birthday is the beginning of November 8th. So she's just like, I just want to just take a trip. All of the things I've endured, God has brought me through it all. I just want to take a trip.
So
Wow.
it's actually Ashley's 30th Asian
Yeah,
adventure.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
she was in Dubai. She went to Dubai alone. Then she was in Bali at a retreat with a bunch of women her age.
Yeah.
And then she went to Singapore alone. And then she was in Taiwan with his family. They went to Bangkok in Thailand together for a soccer game that their daughter was in. And back to Taiwan. And then she's going to go back to Dubai alone before she comes home.
Yeah.
And I said, you go,
Wow.
Amen.
you go.
Amen. I'm
So
not even mad at her. I'm
That's
happy.
beautiful. Yes.
she's watching live right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
So
Oh,
Hey,
hey,
Ashley.
happy birthday.
That is awesome. And
Ashley.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate how you two just brought up about keeping your families together. But the reality is, it is such a challenge, as you said,
Mhm.
Sherine. It just is. And I know that people feel hopeless.
Yes.
You know, they feel helpless,
Yes.
especially when they're not supported. And you touched on, Frank, how the psychiatrist came. Like, was the psychiatrist coming in a way to see where the family's at, to see what help is needed?
To make sure we weren't crazy, trusting in God. That was like the
yeah.
main thing.
Okay.
Like
To bring the reality
Yeah,
to you. I was thinking from a reality standpoint, like, yeah, don't have high hopes. We want
Right,
you to
exactly.
dwell in reality.
Yeah.
Okay, but even if that's the case, like, then where do you go from there? Because that can cause a breakdown to some people. You know, telling me the reality of things is this really looks more grave than what you might see. Like, that does, now you're talking about you witness seeing children abandoned.
Mhm.
You witness seeing children or families torn apart. And we know that when families that are raising children with disabilities, any kind of chronic illness, those families, it can't, there are higher percentages of divorces.
Right.
Mhm.
That's very
And
true.
it just leaves a fragile situation even more fragmented.
Very
And
true.
so I was just wondering, like, what does the like, are they like in a position where they're like offering some kind of added mental support for
yeah,
the family?
they do, but usually the main focus that we had experienced is
Mhm.
okay, you trusting in God, but are you delusional? Do
Right,
you
right.
recognize
Okay.
reality?
Right.
More like, that type of thing. Like, do you need, they will ask, do you need help? But it was usually on the basis of you church people talking about God, this is the reality. You need to wake up. It was
Oh,
more,
wow.
we experienced more of that. So we just had to stand on our faith,
Mhm.
God, and thank God for the saints and the support. And like he said, the Brewingtons and other saints coming to the hospital. I mean, so many saints will always come and visit Ashley. Elder Hickman, he
Yes,
it was like he
indeed.
never missed a
Right.
brain surgery.
You're right about that.
I mean, he was there. He would be there before we get there.
That's
And
right.
you got to be there hours early. He
Yeah.
would sit with
He'd be
us
there.
through the entire surgery and wait until she's done in recovery. So we thank God for Elder Hickman. Ashley and Trey used to call him their second grandfather.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah,
close.
he would come. He
to
would
that.
come to Morgan. He would come pray for her. Praise the Lord, sis. He would come pray for her. It's like he was an angel in past, and he
Yeah,
prayed
That's
and
right.
keep on going. I said, I know that's right.
love.
Yeah, he was about his business.
Yes.
But to Crystal's question, I will say this: in the beginning, when she was much younger, the psychiatrists, they would come by, they want to see, are we okay? And then I guess they felt that we were. But as time went on, you got 6 surgeries, and then years go by, and now she's 7. You're going back into the hospital. Now we're at Hopkins, and one of and her pediatrician had asked me one time. He said, "Hey," he said, have you all considered like counseling, for like peer-to-peer counseling with Ashley?" And I said, "Well, what would that look like?" So he told me, and he said, "I think it'll be good for her." Well, that never got set up for whatever reason. But then he came back to me. He said, "Hey," he said, "would you guys consider like a family counseling?" And I was like, "Okay, what would that look like?" So he told us and stuff. And so what we decided to do we decided to do the family counseling. And I will say this, because when people are going through things, you don't know how much it really affects you.
Yes.
And I know this whole thing, now today we talk a lot about mental health,
Mm-hmm.
people's mental health, but
It
mental
was
health isn't
taboo
new,
back then.
but some time ago you wasn't talking about mental health a whole lot.
Yeah.
But so we actually we went through some sessions of counseling, and it was in conjunction with Ashley's pediatrician. He didn't do the counseling, but there was a one of his associates who did the counseling, and she was very good. But the one thing that it showed me, she went. I remember one day she went around the table and she asked, how does each person feel? How is this? What are your thoughts on this? And to hear my wife, I mean, I just never knew. I just, she expresses a lot of things to me, but then there are a lot of things that get held back. And, because when you're in something, you don't know how long that is, and you want it to be over, but you don't know how long you have to endure this particular season.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like, I was like, wow, I just never knew. And then just to hear Ashley's perspective and Trey's perspective, it really, really helped me to really understand is that everybody in the family is affected.
Yes.
Even though they may never say anything about it, they are affected. So the more we talked about it, I think the better things got. Not that things were bad,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that we're talking about
You're
these
getting it
things,
out, but
we're
you have
getting
to
it
tell
out.
them about Trey.
Yes.
You said,
Because sometimes you feel like everybody is protecting everybody, and it's like the elephant in the room that
Right.
nobody wants to say anything. But you're right. I think it does kind of give everybody a firsthand view of how everybody is looking at it. Because what is it? Have you ever seen that movie Vintage Point, where everybody was looking at the same thing, but their viewpoint of it was so different?
Right.
And everybody is affected differently from, what you're going through.
And also too, one thing that I learned, I remember Trey was 5 years old, and he came to me. She actually was in the hospital, and so Sherine was. They were at Hopkins.
well,
So
let me
go ahead.
set this up before you
Go
say
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
He was, whenever we go to the hospital, like you said, Paula, you would tell Jeremy, okay, today is Morgan's day. We got to go to the hospital. You're going to come in with us, whatever. So when we had to go and have a procedure or surgery or something like that, then, because we would be there for a long time, most of the time Trey would be there. So we made sure that, they brought toys and games and just made it kid friendly. And it's like fun time, arts and crafts, not like this misery and daunting thing, because we didn't want that in his mind or Ashley's mind. So they would play video games while we're in the ER and, getting ready for surgery. So things like that. So we're thinking, before Frank says this, that Trey is okay. Daddy spend time with him. Mommy spend time. He love his sister. They love each other. They still close to this day. You can't split them up. And he's happy even when we go to the hospital. Trey is happy. That's what we think, because that's what we see. So now Frank will tell you.
So one day, Sherine and Ashley, they're in the hospital, and him and I, we're going to go to the hospital later that day. And he said to me, he said, Dad, he said, is Ashley going to die?
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
And when
That's what I was
he said
wondering.
that, it was like this gut punch. And I was just like, and I'm saying to myself, okay, wait a minute. I got to give him an answer. I can't just brush him off, because this came from somewhere. And if I brush this off, I think I'll be doing him a disservice. I'll be doing us all a disservice. And I prayed right quick. I was like, God, you got to give me an answer to give him.
At 5 years old.
5 years old. And I can't remember exactly what I said to him, but God did give me an answer to give him. But what it let me know is that even at 5 years old, he's got these thoughts going through his mind, He's trying to process them, understand, what do I do with this? So when
Mm.
he asks the question out of just pure innocence, is she going to die? As a parent, you're just like, you can't overlook that. You always, and it taught me, hey, make sure that we create a platform for our kids to be able to come and talk to us.
Yes.
Okay, what's going on? You can come and talk to us. I may not have the answer, but at least I'm going to sit and listen and consider their thoughts, because it's important. And to that point, I strongly, strongly encourage people, if you can get some sort of counseling, if you've been dealing with something for a long time,
Mhm.
some counseling.
Yeah.
Let's, bounce stuff off of other people who can give you some guidance. I firmly believe in prayer. I stand on that.
That's right.
But at the same time, counselors are here for a reason.
And even if it's just to be
Absolutely.
able to talk, and I know sometimes you say things to the counselor who you would, like they say, when that door closes, it's
Mhm.
just you and the counselor. So
That's right.
even be able to admit things to the counselor
Right.
that you can't admit to your closest friend
Right.
is it's
Right.
it's releasing. It just feels like you are free of that thing.
That's right.
And that matters because what we were considering, now counseling brought this out of Trey because
Mhm.
now we finally had a platform for everyone to speak.
Right.
So then he felt freedom, or like it was okay to tell us what he's really feeling, which he never realized that he could just tell us. But what it made us consider was all these years, all these times
Hmm.
that his sister was in the hospital and he's home with daddy. We thinking me and Ashley suffering. Ashley suffering because she having the stuff going on. I'm suffering because I'm sleeping in a hard chair, for months on end. Dad suffering because he running back and forth DC to Baltimore, going to work, picking Trey up, taking him to school, going to after school stuff, and they coming to the hospital, bringing me food from Whole Foods. Remember that all the time.
Mhm.
So we're thinking everyone's suffering, but we wasn't thinking of Trey. So that means all those times that little boy was laying at home in his room alone. He usually had his sister in his room alone on his pillow, crying,
Oh
praying
my
to
goodness.
God and wondering, am I ever going to see my best friend again? Is Ashley going to die? But he never knew that he could say that to
Right.
his parents, because how do you articulate that as a kid? So the fact that that counseling made us realize it's okay to speak. It's okay to unleash and exhale. It's okay to tell your family how you feel. You're still strong. You still have faith.
Mhm.
God still loves you. You didn't let the church down because you're not a superhero, because you're saying, what in the world is going on? Lord, I need to know. I need some help. You don't have to be a superhero. Exhale, let it out. Get a
Mhm.
friend, get a counselor, family, get around the dinner table, something, but let it out. So I thank
And
God that he finally told us what
Yeah.
he was going through.
even from a parent standpoint, I mean, I struggled with a lot of things that, I mean, I never went to counseling, but there were two incidents, just what y'all saying about Trey, that stood out in my mind. And one was when she first came home, and she came home on a feeding tube, and I didn't know how to do anything. And they were just like, oh, yeah, you just do it like this. They made it look so easy. But when she came home and she had to be in a bassinet right next to my bed, I just knew, okay, once I get her home and I do this and that and everything in between, she gonna perk up and she's gonna, become this person, that this child that I had. I just think all she needed was the love that I had. Y'all, after about a couple of days of lack of sleep, because I had to keep waking her up to feed her, and by the
Right.
time you breastfeed her, and it was time for her to go back to sleep, and it was like 30 more minutes, and it was time for you to get her up again because she was so small. There were times, and I didn't admit this to people for years, but there were times that I did, when I woke up, I kept telling the Lord, if I wake up and she's still alive, I'm gonna lose my mind. That's how sleep
Mhm.
deprived I was.
Right.
That's
Right.
how alone I felt. And I just felt like I didn't know what to do. But the Lord let me know, if you do wake up and this girl is gone, you're gonna lose your mind. You don't even realize what you're saying. But I wanted I wanted this cross to pass me. What was it? This cup to pass me.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
wanted this
Right.
cup to pass me. And
that's
then there was another time, and she had her surgery on her feet in 2019, and I cried like a baby. I felt like I had to admit this to somebody, and
Mhm.
I admitted it to my sister and my best friend. And I was in there with the doctors, and they were going through the whole process, and they were going through the directives, and they said, well, if she stops breathing, do you want us to resuscitate her? I felt so bad, guys.
Right.
I sat there and thought for a minute.
Mhm.
I did. And I
Right.
told my sister them that, and I cried like a baby because all that I was thinking of is, especially she was at this point where she was like, it was 2019. So Morgan was what? 15. And I just was so tired, not just of her, but just of the back and forth between her and Jeremy. And then just sometimes I didn't even have enough time to sleep. When I sat down to lay down to sleep, my mind was rolling off of what I needed to do the next day. So I was just like, Lord, is it sad to say that I just want a normal life? And
yeah,
I sat there for a moment. And when he said, well, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to resuscitate her? I felt like a heel, but I had to say yes. But I ain't gonna lie, I
Mhm.
was tossing it up like,
Mhm.
okay, is this the Lord's way of delivering me?
But
This
that's real talk, Paula.
It
it
is.
is,
yeah,
It
it
is.
is.
right.
It is.
It's real. But I was so when I admitted that to my sister and my best friend, I cried like a baby because I love my daughter. I
Yeah,
just did not love my life that came along with it. I was just like, I'm tired all the time. I'm frustrated. I'm running, trying to get her one place, Jeremy another place. And so I just say that to those parents that go through those moments. I'm just going to be honest with you. I had those moments myself,
yeah,
but I will say that she has been such an important part of my life. Advocacy wouldn't be born from it, but I ain't going to lie. I'll be like,
Absolutely.
can I
Right.
do advocacy in another way? But I just say that to say that's how real I didn't have counseling, but I had to be real to talk to someone. I had those confidants where I was so real to them because I felt like everybody kept making me feel like, oh, you doing so great, girl. You are the bomb. You are this. And I'm like,
exactly.
That's right.
let me
Right.
expose myself because
Yeah,
I
you
am,
can't
and
say
Crystal, you
it.
know I say that all the time. No, I'm not. Let me tell
Exactly.
you how real I am with this thing. I'm struggling with it. And if that's the only way that I feel like I can get out of this situation, I think I may take it. But
Right.
I cried like a baby afterwards. I
I
did.
do.
And Paula, as Sherine,
Real quick, Frank, I'm so sorry. I apologize, everybody. I got kicked out and couldn't get back in, but I'm back.
no,
Okay.
good to have you back, Bunny.
Can I
No,
say
go
something to
ahead.
Bunny? What Paula just said, Bunny, I remember, and I told myself to remember to tell you this. Thank you, because years ago we were at a women's retreat, and you said to me, because I had gave a testimony of something in the retreat, and I went out in the hall. You came out behind me, and you said, you just held me and said, Sherine, you are so strong.
People don't know. It's
Yeah.
just you holding
And I
on
said,
by
no,
us.
I'm not strong.
I'm not.
I'm not strong. And you
No.
said, well, we don't see it. All we see is that you're strong. And I
Yeah.
felt like I could have just passed out and fainted.
Yeah.
It's like the whole world just like
Yeah.
crashed down on me when you said you're so strong. And I'm thinking, what world are they living in? I am not.
Yeah. That
Like
was me.
I'm barely breathing. I'm barely
Yeah.
standing. If it's not by the grace of God and the
Yeah.
prayers of the saints, I'm like, what is she talking about? And Bunny, you held me so tight. I'll never forget it. And I said when I get back on here, I was going to remind you that you did that, and it mattered because you said I was strong, and I was able to say, no, I'm not. So to your point, Paula, sometimes you just want to admit it.
That's right.
Just
Just
want to admit it.
out and say, I'm not a superhero.
I'm not. I'm struggling with this thing. I am struggling so hard that people don't see. And I used to tell my cousin Crystal, I said, when she was saying I'm strong, I said, okay, now I got to expose myself even more because I'm living a lie. And God's like, I'm gonna make you keep living it because you making people believe that you so strong. So I call myself every time somebody say, I said, let me tell, come in. I cry all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you don't I know I cry. When I'm going home, I cry. I would come to church. Sometimes I was so beat down, but I was like, I need a word that I don't get out on that bridge
Yes.
sometimes.
And,
Yeah.
and
It's
see, the difference
real.
is what we see is God's grace and
Oh my
mercy,
God.
and how you guys are carrying yourselves in front of us. Whether
Mm,
we want to say it's a mask or not, God carried you through for this moment
yeah.
now so that you can have a testimony and tell people how God held you up, because all we saw was strength. All we saw was, you know, y'all came to church, you had it together. You know, we didn't see the behind, just like when somebody is putting on a big play, a movie. We don't see the messed up stuff that happens
Yeah.
offset. We don't see what happens in the kitchen when the caterers are back there messing up everything, but the plate is beautiful. We don't get
Mm,
to see that. And it's because God wants us to see what it is, the message, the point
Yes.
that he
Yes.
wants us to see. And that's what we saw. So for you, Paula, we saw your strength and
oh
you
my
being
God.
strong for advocacy. What
Yeah.
we saw in you, Sherine and Frank, is the fact that you can now tell a story. You can now share how God pulled you through all of those surgeries, everything. It's just God strengthened you guys for us to see that they did it with all that's going on.
Oh
And
my
now I
God.
can come and I can do
That's
it afraid, do it tired,
Yeah.
do it weak. And they'd be like, buddy, you so strong. You the best grandmother. And I'm like, y'all just don't know.
Exactly.
So I get it. I
Well, I think when I would say that to Paula, I'm not there visibly seeing Paula.
Mhm.
So I'm saying it out of Paula calling me, sharing her
Oh
vulnerabilities.
my God.
You know, I think I would say it because, so I think it's a difference in when I say it, because I was too experiencing those things. But then when you talk and hear someone else, sometimes I felt like, God, you've been giving me strength. I need you to give Paula strength, you
And
know?
I
And
needed it.
so I
Yes, we
felt
did it.
like when I would talk to Paula,
Yeah.
honestly, I used to feel like, pull yourself up, Crystal.
She
Because
did too.
I would feel that way
She
because
did.
when you hear of another story, you
Yeah.
know, like Frank and Sherine, you might was in the hospital and you're dealing with your baby. You see your baby girl there. But when you look over or you hear of another story of someone else, you start feeling like, I got some hope over here. I got some
Yeah.
strength, or I got some help. Or you say, oh my gosh, I wonder how that one is going to make it. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Like you start being thankful and grateful,
Yeah.
even in your
Your stuff.
what you're dealing with, your
Mhm.
difficulties. You might even feel a little hopeless at that moment, but sometimes you look at another situation and you be like, you know, and that's what I would get from Paul, because Paul was always vulnerable with me, and I'm not
Yes,
visibly
I
even
was.
in state.
I
So,
was.
honey, you're saying you see her. You guys might would see Frank and Shireen. I wouldn't see Paula. I would hear
Mm.
her stories and then of my
And hear my
interactions when I'm
tears.
around. But I
And
can hear her,
yeah.
and I would be a listening ear to Paula,
Yeah.
because I always knew when Paula would call me, I
Yeah.
felt like I wish sometimes that my close friends could understand me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like when you talk to
Mm.
someone and they know where you are and they feel it, versus you talking to someone and they're like, girl, you need to do this. That kid,
Yeah.
that behavior, that's unacceptable. And you're like, no, you might do that with your kid, but my kid has these different vulnerabilities. It
Mhm.
doesn't quite work that way. And so I would feel like not too many people can understand me because they're not dealing with what I'm dealing
Yeah.
with. So what I'm speaking is a bit foreign to them. If you're not dealing with a kid with autism, if you're not dealing with behavior issues, you're not really going to understand what I'm talking
Mhm.
about, and you're going to try to give me your remedies for those things. And I just felt like Paula will call me and we could have those discussions and I can
Mhm.
listen to her and I could understand. And so I think that, you
Yeah.
know, when you're walking this journey, it it can be a lonesome journey,
It is.
you know, especially if someone who can relate, even on any kind of scale. I mean, you guys shared the story of the family who came and was a blessing to you from their experience,
Mhm.
their experience of a child with the illness, their experience of dealing with doctors in the hospital. Like, it wasn't the same exact thing, but it was so close, and it enriched you and empowered you. It sustained you and gave you so much more to go forth with. You know, that did a lot for you, but that's what a lot of families are missing.
They're
They're
missing.
really missing people being vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're missing people being truthful. They're missing people showing compassion,
Yeah.
and not just keeping their story to themselves. And what you guys are doing tonight, and that's why we had to have a part two. It is so necessary, because you, Frank and Sherine, look, we
It's
was talking
real.
about y'all for days after that. Like,
Yeah.
we was like, oh my gosh,
It was so
because
real.
it is so real. It
Mhm.
is so touching. It it is so what many families who watch, who will watch, what they need,
Right.
what they need to draw some strength from, because it's
Mhm.
tough out here.
It's
It is.
tough.
And the doctors talk to us like in a matter of fact.
Right.
You know, we're one of many patients. They're
Mhm.
look. It's a matter of fact, and you feel like you kind of thrown to the curb sometimes. And you guys have expressed the many surgeries Ashley endured. I mean, I can't even imagine how it
Mhm.
could be sometimes. You have those moments to say, I was strong every time. I knew the Lord was going to make a way. I'm not saying that's not true, but I want to also hear, I got caught, a man, in my moment of weakness. I cried out.
Yeah.
I just thought what Paul was just expressing, what Sherine just said, someone told me I'm strong. Like, I need to hear that too, because you know, many mothers and family, they all need to hear that it gets like that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That mean you don't love your child. It does not mean you don't love your child.
That's
And I
right.
want to give kudos to my cousin, because I will say, every time I called her, guys, she would answer. I don't care what she was doing. I don't know if I caught her in the middle of something, but she
Girl, you
knew
caught me
about.
at a one of my daughter's volleyball game. I was like, go ahead in, baby, I'm
When
coming.
I tell you, she made herself available to me all the time. I would cry on the phone to her. I was so vulnerable. But one thing that I can honestly say is, by the time I got off that phone, I was encouraged.
That's all right.
Amen.
That's all
That's
right. And I will
beautiful.
say this too, because and I think and all of you all have touched on it, but I think it's so important in that, and Paul, is something that you said. You said that at times you were like, not that you hated your life, but the
Yeah,
situation that was going on.
I did.
And one thing I think that too many times, people, we feel like we got to keep it all in control and we got to control it all. But the reality is we don't control anything. The only thing that we can control is ourselves. That's it. Our situations in life, yeah, we can do certain things, but certain things in life you have no control over at all. And because of that, we feel a certain way. And sometimes our lives, we don't like where we are in life.
Mm.
I will say this. All of this stuff that we've gone through with Ashley and our family, it has been the greatest blessing in my life. It
Wow.
has been one of the greatest blessings in my life, because it has helped shape me in so many ways,
Mhm.
made me so much more compassionate in so many
Yeah.
ways. And the one thing that, if I can say anything to your audience, is this: all of the emotions that God has given us, we as humans didn't create any of them. And I remember we were in a counseling session, and one of the things that I noticed that was very profound in the session, the counselor had like a on her wall a list of all of the human emotions. I had never even considered this before. And then I
Mm.
started to think about it, and I was like, wait a minute. It's God that creates us, and it's God who gives us all of these emotions. So the question is, why does he give us all these emotions? And the reality is this: throughout our lives, regardless of how good our lives are, how bad our lives are, we are going to experience all of these human emotions.
I
If
like that.
it's depression, if it's sadness, if it's happiness, if it's joy, whatever it is, we are going to experience it all. And here's the thing, it's okay. It's good, because by us experiencing all of these emotions throughout life, it keeps us balanced.
Yeah.
Where we become unbalanced is where we get stuck in a particular place.
Amen. You can't stay there, as Bishop Johnson would say. You can't stay there.
There's nothing wrong with being depressed.
Nope.
But if you're just continually depressed, then there's a problem. Then now you're unbalanced. Now you got to work on that. But we will experience all of God's emotions. And the thing of it is, sometimes as parents, we feel like failures. We feel like we don't like where we are. That's natural. That's normal. But so many people don't hear people say, hey, it's okay. It's okay. You know, I remember we feel like we got to be strong. I mean, it's like when I was just listening to y'all, I thought about, like, I'll use a sports analogy, like ESPN. People only watch ESPN for the highlights. ESPN has made their money off of highlights. People don't want to watch a full game. All they want to see is the highlights. So when people see us or other people, you know, it's like, yo, it's so strong and stuff, they see the highlights. They don't see as everybody.
I like that.
You know,
come on here, Frank.
Oh, that's right.
They don't see that part. They don't see
Right.
they don't see. I remember one time Ashley was having surgery and at Hopkins, and I remember I would generally take her back to the operating room, and we go in this operating room. It was very cold. And I remember Dr. Carson was in there, and he was like, okay, you ready to go? She's ready to go. I was like, yep, she's ready to go. So you turn his music on. He always has classical music on. And so he has his music on. And I remember I had to pick her up and like lay her on this table. And I know what my reality is. This might be the last time.
Oh my goodness.
So I lay her on this table one time. And this particular time, she was about 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so scared.
Oh,
and she was like, Daddy, no, Daddy, no, Daddy, no. And I'm just like, you know, I got to put you up here because they have to do this. And I laid her down and they put the mask on her, the gas mask on her. And she did that until she was out. And I, as a parent, I just felt helpless. And I walked out of that operating room and I was like, God, I'm trusting you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what your will is here. I know what I want your will to be, but I know what the reality is. This might be my last time seeing her. And as parents, we feel like we want to just protect, but we can't do that. You know, I remember another time, you know, she had a surgery and I was with her. We were up there at the hospital all day and she got up walking around after surgery, and my brother and my sister-in-law, they were there as well. And I had rode to the hospital with them. So me and Trey went back.
You're about to tell that story.
Yeah, me and Trey were going back home. So as soon as I get home, I'm home maybe me and Trey, because it's a Sunday and I got to get him ready for school the next day. So I get a call from Sherine and she is just crying. And I'm like, what? I said, what's going on? She was like, so she called me by my nickname and she goes, Ashley, she's not breathing. I was like, what do you mean she's not breathing? We just saw her. And she was just so crying. And she had me on the phone, but she also had our assistant pastor, Elder Davis, on the phone too.
And he had the whole church praying because it was Bible class.
And she said to me,
Ashley died.
She said, Ashley coded.
It was
just like,
she was gone, y'all.
I didn't know what to do. And what I'm hearing, I'm just like, what? You know, and I just cried. I mean, just cried. And I called my brother back and I called him. I said, hey, man, I got to go back to the hospital.
I think you called Sean Taylor too, your buddy.
Well, I remember, but I know I called my brother. I called my brother. And I was still crying when I'm talking to my brother. And my brother's never heard me cry like that. But on the way, so he came back and we went back up to the hospital. And on the way back to the hospital, we had to drive up Baltimore Washington Parkway. And it was like God said to me, she's gonna be okay. She's gonna be okay. So from that point on, I was like, okay, she's gonna be okay. But you don't know what you don't know. And when I got there, they had her on a breathing machine. And within probably 30 minutes to an hour, they'd taken the breathing machine off. She had started breathing again. And she had had a seizure, which she had never had. She had a seizure after surgery simply because there was an air bubble that got caught in her brain and it caused her to have a seizure.
I've
But
never seen that many doctors and people and nurses running from everywhere. I mean, it was like she was on the floor and everyone was trying to resuscitate her. And then they wouldn't let me see her anymore. I was like, is my baby dead or alive? Is she dead or alive? And no one could answer me. They wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't let me see her. And I was like, oh my God. And so that's why I called Fletcher. He had the church praying. I had him on speaker. That's when I called Frank. And they were like, Miss Padgett, you can't see her. She's not breathing. And they took her away.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just left here. Like, what am I going to do? So I was just praying. When they was trying to resuscitate her, I was just crying in her ear. I kept praying and saying, you're supposed to live. You have work to do. God has called you. He has saved you. You have to live. And I was just breathing that in her ear and speaking that in her spirit. I was like, live, Ashley, come back to life. You got to breathe. You have to live. And I was speaking in tongues and laying hands on my baby. And I was there alone. It felt like me against the world. And it was like she was laying there just limp. I mean, a long time went by. And they took her away. Yeah. They stopped trying. They just took her away.
Oh my gosh. That is oh my God.
The only reason why I tell what
30 years old. Thank God.
That's right.
Hallelujah.
The only reason, one of the main reasons why I tell that story is because whatever your journey is, you don't know what tomorrow holds.
Yeah.
But just be grateful for every moment that you have. You may not like where you are right now in life, but the one thing I have learned is nothing lasts. Nothing will last. Will be the same always. Yeah. Things always change. So embrace wherever you are right now. Embrace it. Thank God for it. You may not like it, but you won't be there always. You will not be there always.
This too shall pass.
This is going to pass, and of course, we want to just snap our fingers and everything is like back to quote unquote normal. And I got to a point, Paul, you mentioned about normal earlier. I was like, God, I don't even know
what is normal.
I mean, this is my normal, I guess, so, and I'm grateful just where we are, because I don't know I know what I would like God's will to be, but I don't know what it is going to be. I have to live and keep living just so I can see, what the end is going to be, as they say.
Who can tell?
Who can tell?
Johnson preached about David and his dying son. Who could tell?
But we're just grateful. We're just grateful for what God has done, and I just want to encourage as many people as possible. Just lean into God, hold on to Him, and let Him guide your life.
Amen. Trust Him. Give Him your all. Live for Him. God will hear you. He will answer. He's always there. Right. Cry out. Reach out. Get someone else. Speak up. Speak out. And let's just love. Love conquers all. It matters.
Yeah. And you don't know, again, you don't know what the end is going to be. I mean, Ashley's about to turn 30 years old. I mean, she's in business. And I mean, we have a business, and she's, one of the partners, and she's doing great things. And it's just like, it's such a blessing. So you don't know what the end is going to be. And I'm looking forward to, what the future looks like.
Man, when I just tell you, awesome. That is beautiful. And I will say that even I kind of have that mindset with Morgan. I think when she was born, and I would think about, okay, when I turn this age, she's gonna be this age. And just from where she was, I couldn't ever see her getting to that point. And one day I thought about her being 20 one day, and I'm like, or her being 21 or whatever. And I'm just like, with all that's going on, it was like the seizures and this condition come up and that. I just could never see that. And so you're right. When you
How old is she now?
She's 20. To
20.
God be the glory. But you never, when you sit down and you think about those rough days, you
Yes.
it's like, I can just never see that. And where you envision, it gets me crying because I think about those times that you didn't think that she
Yes.
would have that. Or, sometimes in my mind, not that she was at the hospital as much, but I prepared to bury my child. And
Mhm.
who does that?
Right.
Right.
That's right.
Who does that? Who looks at, you know what, Paula? Don't get too excited about this because you know she might not be here. And that's some of the things that you deal with when you
Yes.
have a child with disabilities, or for me, it's a child with the unknown disabilities. When you go to the doctor's appointments and they tell you this and they tell you that, it's like, well, let me just enjoy the days that I can have with her because I can't see, okay, when I'm this age, she'll be this age. And I couldn't see that. Now I could always see it with Jeremy, but I couldn't see it with her. But
Right.
one day my brother-in-law said something to me, my brother-in-law, Sean Curry, he said, we don't know what tomorrow holds for any of our kids, and our kids are perfectly healthy. And that
Mhm.
gave me a different spin on it.
Mhm.
But I will say this,
Mhm.
I valued the times not only with Morgan, but with Jeremy. And
Mhm.
after he said that, I started thinking about that. I'm like, Morgan can outlive all of us.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Right.
right.
Real
That's
talk.
yeah.
Yeah.
She could outlive all of us. But I did start, for me, Morgan gave me, and this is my closing statement, Morgan gave me a new lease on life.
Mm.
She gave me a new lease on how I deal with people, how I interact with people, how I don't hold grudges, how I'm able to say I love you,
Yeah.
how I'm able to say, hey, it was my fault. So I think for me, Morgan taught me those things. She taught me how to um let it go, as
Yeah.
I would say, just let it go and just understand that life is so much bigger than that. So if something was to happen, is it worth you leaving this earth and having that situation in your heart, or someone else leaving and having something in your heart? So a lot of the stuff for me, I let stuff roll off of my back because I just don't hold on too much. And I will say Morgan taught me that. So those are my closing remarks, guys. I'm just so emotional right now because that story, it's just so funny because those stories made me think of one time real quick. Morgan had a seizure, and these people, I went to the hospital, and they overreacted,
Mm.
and the security people blocked the door, and they put my baby on a breathing machine
Mm.
in ICU, and over a simple seizure. But I kept trying to tell him she's just having a seizure.
Right.
But when I tell y'all they put her on a breathing machine and I sat in ICU at the bottom of her bed and I cried like a baby because even though I knew it was just a seizure, just to see her in that position became so real to me. And
Right.
so I just, again, thank you guys for sharing. You took me back to that moment, and
I'm sorry. It's not
Sorry.
it's
even
okay. It's okay. I'm happy because basically we're here to still talk about them.
right.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Praise
Yes.
Yeah.
God.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Crystal, your closing remarks.
I'm just grateful that we had the opportunity to sit with Frank and Sherine again. It's just been just so refreshing to hear your testimony, your faith, your vulnerabilities, even out just the challenges you went through with your daughter and how your family came together and worked through things together. Like, there are just so many takeaways. And I'm just going to tell you, we're probably going to be talking about you for the next couple of days. It's just so many takeaways that we have from you two. And so I just appreciate you sharing with us tonight, once again, your time, just everything. I really appreciate you two, and I thank God for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This has been just amazing. And to know that our children, grandkids, whomever, that have those special abilities and different challenges have taught us all something, valuable lessons that we will take into our relationships, how we deal and interact with others. It's just amazing to know that these little humans can teach us adults
Oh,
some amazing lessons.
yes, yes.
And they go around and they plant their seeds in all of our hearts and minds, and those seeds then grow up in us and teaches us how to be better with each other. And all of your testimonies have done that. When God gives you these challenges and trials, it's so that you can go out and help other people, not knowing back then how you were going to get through it, but today
Right.
you can look back to see how you made it. And then those of us that are coming dealing with that right now today, we can look at you all to know that Frank and Sherine did it, Crystal did it, Paula did it, and here I am coming up with Grace, and I'm gonna do it. I got this. I
That's
got this. I there is nothing that I can't do when I look to him, and I've got a team of people with resources and support. So thank you all for sharing and being vulnerable, and just be willing to help others, because we could keep our testimonies, our challenges and trials to ourselves and just not help someone else. But I'm so grateful that God has given us the mind to help others and to do unto others as we will want them to do unto us and our loved ones that are dealing with these special challenges. So thank you so much. I mean, knowing you guys 30 plus years, and I'm still sitting like, what? So I am sure that our audience was just blessed on today for you guys. And I'm so glad that I was able to get back in, because I would have been so mad if I'd have missed all of this. So this was a great podcast. Thank you guys so much. All of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you. We,
all.
we definitely appreciate the work that you all do. And it is so important and valuable to help
Yes.
uplift people. I was talking to a young man last night, and he's dealing with some things. And I told him, I said, you just keep fighting, you keep enduring. I said, because the time's gonna pass by, God's gonna bring you through, and God's gonna make it as if the trials that you overcame, they will seem as a dream
Yeah.
in your view.
Mm.
And
Hallelujah.
when I look back over my life, all the things that God has allowed us to endure, it seems as a dream. Yeah, we experienced it.
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes you're in the fiery furnace, and but you're not getting burnt up.
Mm. Mm.
Praise
So
God. Mm.
And I
That's
tell you,
right.
I love you guys. I'm just giving you virtual hugs, and I just love you. And I do want to mention how Sherine, when Morgan was first born, Sherine came up to the hospital, packed her with her little backpack, and she sat right there and encouraged me. And I
that's
thank God for that. Not just one time. Sherine came up there, and I didn't even know all of Ashley's story, but it was just so good because I did feel alone at that time, but I wasn't really at the place that I could just be real. But I just did appreciate that. And I just
That's
say,
what it's all about.
yep.
Helping.
yes, I just say I love you guys. I really, really do. I feel like honestly, I have connected with you guys in a way that I didn't because I didn't even know how
Right.
similar our stories were. But I just really love you guys. I thank you for just being on the show again. I pray that you at the scene you see all the little blessings, the little comments and stuff.
Hi, Aunt Joan. We see you, Aunt Joan. Hi, everyone. Thank you. We love you guys.
Yeah, so we're just sending virtual hugs. And I do want to say we want Trey and his family on here to tell us their story too.
Okay.
Come on, we got to extend that to the Trey family now.
Okay. I'll definitely let them know.
Yes.
Yeah, we and I know he's one of few words like I knew Frank was, but Frank, I just love how you use your platform to speak.
Yeah.
because you said some words of wisdom. Oh my. I love the highlights. I think I'm going to do that, like the ESPN, the highlights.
Mhm.
Man, awesome. But yes, guys, thank you so much for joining us again. This was such a session that I felt like I've been delivered from something. So I just thank you. And again, people, I hope our truthful testimonies have helped you. And then, like you say, Bunny, just help you, even if it's an encouragement.
That's
But
right.
no, please know that you're not alone. That's what it's all about. You're
That's
not
right.
alone.
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks again. We'll have another episode of Advocacy next Thursday. Come join us. So we can have another. I don't know who we have on next week, but we just know we've been having some great guests on. That's been a blessing to us. And ultimately, that's what advocacy is about, to be a blessing to those that are lonely and think they're alone. We just want to be a blessing to you. Okay.
It's all right.
All
You.
right, guys. Have
Keep
a
up the
good one,
great work.
Sherine.
Keep up the great work.
Yes. Bye.
Yes, thank you.
All right.